All right, and we back on the forecast. Now, to me, it's a shame that we have to debate about protecting our children. It's no question that we are under attack. It's been hundreds of years of evidence. It's evidence everywhere on social media. You have white men kicking babies and then calling them niggas. You have white men punching 11-year-old girls in the face right after they use Kareem Hunt to show that it's never a reason to punch a woman in the face, let alone a little girl. But we go right back to blaming each other, arguing about symptoms of the problem instead of addressing the root of the problem. In a reverse situation, how many black men surrounded by a group of white kids is going to punch an 11-year-old white girl in the face? I mean, how many would do that to a grown white woman? You don't see many examples of that the other way around because it comes with consequences. People like Emmett Till and George Steiny didn't do anything to white women. But both of these young black boys died because they came across white women. Until harming us, men, women, and children comes with consequences, then it's going to continue to happen. If you don't have some kind of army or nation backing up what you say, then nobody respects your words. And even though the dominant society has their differences, they stay on code when it comes to us. They don't care what that person was doing. If somebody like Jane Elliott got killed by a black person, do you think they would let it slide? A white woman who has called out racism for years, they may use it as an example about standing up for black people, but they would make sure they punish whoever did harm to her. For them, they stay on code no matter what happens. A 19-year-old brother in Maryland, Anton Black, got choked to death by Greensboro police for walking down the street with a white boy who was his cousin-in-law. Now let's see what led the police to strangle this young 19-year-old brother, Anton Black, to death.
This is a video of an arrest of a 16-year-old African-American boy in Greensboro, Maryland. To many in the small town on Maryland's Lower Eastern Shore, the takedown of the juvenile, captured on cell phone, represents how policing has changed in the tight-knit community since city leaders decided to embrace proactive policing.
It wasn't until this council came and members of this council said things of the nature, we need police that'll be tougher on the community, tougher on the citizens.
Police would not comment on the video or why the 16-year-old juvenile was taken to the ground. But to the friends of Anton Black, another young man who actually died during an arrest here, the video is yet another painful reminder of how law enforcement not only alienates the black community, but can have tragic consequences when community input is ignored.
He landed a part in the movie. Of course, they killed him, took his life, so he won't be in that. But we used to practice his lines and things with him. And he was going back and forth to New York on his own, 18, for different events. You know what I mean? For commercials and stuff like that. He was really moving. And he came home to visit his mother here, and they took his life.
Anton's story begins in September when the high school football star and track champion made a decision that for most would be inconsequential. He decided to take a walk to the park. He was joined by a 12-year-old family friend, a cousin through marriage. But police say a white woman called 911 and accused Anton of abducting him, an accusation his family characterizes as absurd.
He's talking to a police officer. And his little friend, that is his cousin-in-law, because the boy's cousin is married to my daughter. We're all in the same family. They put out that he kidnapped somebody. The boy's father told me that the boy told him that he didn't kidnap me.
Last month, Maryland State Police say an off-duty police officer responded to a call of a man dragging a 12-year-old boy down a street. That man turned out to be 19-year-old Anton Black of Greensboro. Police say they demanded Black let go of the boy, and that is when Black took off. That chase, police say, led them inside Black's car. Black then hit one officer in the face and bit two others, according to police. And police say they continued to chase after Black and then tased and arrested him. But after the arrest, police say he began showing signs of medical distress. Shortly thereafter, police say Black died at a hospital. Now, 1 month later, as WBOC Midshore Bureau Chief Amy Liu reports, Black's family says there are still more questions than answers.
Tonight, Black's family attended the Greensboro Town Hall meeting right here behind me, but town council members say their hands are tied until the Maryland State Police investigation finishes. Council members say they can't talk. Meanwhile, Black's family also says they can't talk much about the case either, but wants whoever's responsible gone. Inside the trailer park off Greensboro Road,
we just trying to get justice for my brother.
A vigil with lighted candles and colorful balloons sat silently in front of the home of 19-year-old Anton Black.
He was a successful young man trying to make it in life.
Black's brother, Brandon Jackson, says his brother's death was no accident.
We ain't resting until them cops go to jail for killing my brother, and we get justice for my brother.
The same thought echoed at a town hall meeting last night.
Y'all gonna have to pay for this.
The crowd here shouting at times.
It's very hard for us.
Council members held back tears, admitting they could not comment or give more information on the case.
This officer that you gave another chance, Anton's gone.
Many who spoke asked the council why none of the officers involved were placed on administrative leave. According to Police Chief Mike Petio, quote, "After careful review of the body cam footage and talks with other agencies, we decided this case did not require any officer to be put on administrative leave."
Where's the decency?
Still, many from last night's meeting disagree.
There's no closure because these cops are still on duty. Like, nothing's going on right now.
And as the candles burn in front of his brother's vigil, Jackson says he now has more questions
He was a great man.
than answers. Now, Maryland State Police say they do believe that drugs were involved in Black's death, and that is why they are still waiting for a toxicology report. An initial autopsy actually showed that there were no significant injuries to Black's body. Meanwhile, Black's family says they are talking with a lawyer and are still building a case.
Now, Anton Black and his 12-year-old were walking down the street minding their own business when some random white woman calls 911 claiming that a white kid is being dragged down the street like he's being kidnapped. The white woman who called 911, Denise Williams, was bragging about it on Facebook, talking about she's glad she called 911. She claimed his brother Anton Black was dragging this white kid down the street like he was trying to kidnap him, even though we're not the ones with the history of kidnapping people, especially white people. But when the police showed up, something made this brother Anton and the 12-year-old take off running. The police originally said when they caught up, he was fighting them, he punched one cop in the face, he bit 2 other cops. So they had to tase him and put him in a chokehold. Now, even the white woman that called the cops in the first place didn't say she saw him fighting back, but she did say she saw the cops have him in a full Nelson chokehold. Then somehow, after all of that, the brother Anton Black ended up getting away and tried to hide in his car in his mom's driveway. Then his mom heard them breaking his car window and dragging him out the car and him screaming for help. And when she came outside, she saw the police choking her son to the point he was blue in the face. And they didn't stop until his body got limp. Now keep in mind, the whole time they're strangling this brother to death, he is unarmed. He doesn't have a gun or knife or anything. But this young brother walking down the street with his cousin-in-law, who happened to be a 12-year-old white boy, ended up with him getting choked to death.
So it's gotten to the place really that I tell my grandson, don't be coming out at night. Now it makes me feel like that I'm back in the days down south when you're afraid to let your children, especially your black sons, walk from your house to the store.
After his encounter with Webster, Anton ran home and locked himself in a family car. 3 white officers, 2 in plain clothes, chased him. When they arrived at his home, the family says instead of de-escalating, Officer Webster smashed the car window, then tased him and dragged him to the ground as he called for his mother, Janelle Black, who witnessed the struggle.
When I heard him scream, "Mommy, help! Help me, Mommy!" When I walked out through the kitchen, I saw lights. So I turned around and I opened up the door, and all these officers was on top of him. And I asked, "What are you doing?" They said, we tried to detain him. He tried to kidnap a 12-year-old boy.
She says an officer put Anton in a chokehold. Anton's mother watched as her son's face turned purple.
He had Anton in a headlock. They kept trying to handcuff him. I saw Anton kick his legs, and I did say, "Keep still," but that was his last kick.
She saw his head drop forward, then saw officers suddenly scramble to get her son out of handcuffs.
And I said, he's turning blue. But that time, they had him up against the side of this doorway. And the one officer pulled his head back. And when they pulled his head back, Anton's head just dropped. But when I saw his head drop, I saw his face.
She asked officers if she could accompany Anton to the hospital, but instead they locked her into the back of a patrol car.
Finally, the ambulance came, and they had the machine, and they was trying to, you know, get him to breathe, and I still asked again. I must have asked him about almost 10 times, was he under arrest? And each time, they told me no.
And indignity only heightened when police told her Anton was dead. Pain made worse because the medical examiner's office has yet to release a cause of death.
I was crying because I knew he was gone.
His mother and sister, who spoke about the case, believe Anton was asphyxiated. His sister LaTanya viewed her brother's body and saw signs he was strangled.
That night, I went to the hospital to visit Anton's body. And, you know, they had him covered up from, well, I didn't even see his neck, from here down. And they told us that we couldn't touch him. But I did notice that his eyes, the white part of his eyeball, was red. Bloodshot. And I know this for a fact that if you strangle someone long enough, them vessels gonna blow. So that was a main key that I could never forget.
But the medical examiner's office will not comment and says the investigation is still ongoing, despite the fact that details have been leaked to the press that Anton's body had no signs of injury.
Now, the first cop to show up and encounter this young brother, Anton Black, was Officer Tom Webster, who was recently hired by the Greensboro Police. Now, Officer Tom Webster was just fired for kicking a black man in the face and breaking his jaw in 2013. He was even charged for it, but of course he was found not guilty. So he moved to Maryland and became a cop. And ever since he showed up, there were many complaints about him stopping and harassing black men and boys. And who knows what he said to make this brother Anton Black and the 12-year-old take off running. And of course he didn't have a body camera. Then 2 other plainclothes off-duty police officers who were out of their jurisdiction came to help Officer Tom Webster choke this young brother out. Initially, for the first 2 weeks after the incident, they didn't do anything to the cop. He was still on the street patrolling. But after backlash, 2 weeks after the fact, then they decided to go with the procedure of giving him his paid vacation,
which they say is refuted by surveillance video that shows Anton and the boy approaching the patrol car, where he encounters Officer Tom Webster. Officer Webster says something, and then Anton ran. Police have not said why Anton ran, but his family thinks it may be in part because of Webster's controversial past.
If you see the video, it's like it's 1930, and they're going to lynch him for waving at a white woman. I mean, a white woman. You understand what I'm saying?
Webster resigned after he was caught on video kicking this man in the face, breaking his jaw. Many in the town opposed the hiring, and the community members say since his hiring, police have been confronting young black men. Last week, residents and relatives gathered to demand Officer Webster be put on administrative leave with pay. And while they waited for the council's decision, residents also shared stories of how the town had changed and the wounds of neglect that remain unhealed.
It's just not right. It's not right what they did to him. He did not deserve that. And then they lied about the reason why they stopped him in the first place, which is ridiculous. His family knew it was a lie from the beginning because we know him. I didn't have to hang out with him every day to know my brother. I know my brother. And I knew my brother would never harm any child for any reason.
Emotions spilled over, fueled by the inequities and political marginalization not uncommon on Maryland's lower eastern shore.
Growing up, I was always so insecure about being black. You know, it was always, oh, the white people get worshipped. Oh, even the white females, you know, I want to be like them. But being black is such a privilege, and it's such an amazing thing to be, and I've really grown into that. So it's sad to see our young men and our young women being treated the way they are, being killed and not being returned back to their homes and everything.
Residents described the city shifting from community building to aggressive policing and a crime crackdown, a shift that estranged the black community and perhaps precipitated the fear that prompted Anton to flee.
We had officers that cared, that were invested, and if those officers were here on that day and they saw those two young men, knowing the history, knowing that they were friends, it would have never been misconceived to be what it was described as.
Later, after the council voted to suspend the officer, the Real News asked the mayor if he regretted hiring Officer Webster.
You know, there was concern about the hiring of this officer. People said he shouldn't have been hired. How do you respond?
Webster is here, right? He was here. I'm not even going to bring that up.
Okay.
From what happened previously. You know, he's here. We talked to the people. We got their demands. We answered their demands.
And if the town had changed its policing strategy.
Just one last question. There was a sense of policing kind of has changed and become more aggressive towards the African American community. How do you respond to that?
Has police become
more aggressive with the African American community, which precipitated this particular event?
I don't agree with that. Okay. I don't at all.
We also asked the police chief to explain why Anton was chased, and most importantly, when the findings of the investigation would be released.
Today?
What happened the day that Anton died?
Oh, we can't say any of that. We're supposed to find out more information tomorrow. Okay. It's supposed to be released. Everything's supposed to be released. So when we do, everyone will get it.
Are you going to release the body cam footage?
I'm sure if the state's attorney and the rest of us say we can, we can. We wanted to do that from day one.
Okay.
So
you'll release it to the public?
Yep.
Okay, and that's tomorrow?
I'm not sure. We're meeting with people tomorrow. So,
Chief, do you know the origin of the story that he was dragging home? Do you know where that came from?
I would advise not answering those questions.
We also asked state police and Caroline County prosecutors who are leading the probe the status of the investigation. Both told us they were awaiting the autopsy from the Maryland State Medical Examiner's Office, a process that has dragged on for 4 months, which a spokesman for the office says has no specific end in sight.
Now, this young brother, Anton Black, was not a criminal, was not a drug dealer. He was trying to be an actor. But the police claim they have to wait on a toxicology report before they can do anything. What they're trying to do is, if he has so much as even smoked a blunt, they're going to say that was the cause of his death, not the police. They are looking for every excuse to justify the murder. But even if he did smoke a blunt or something, that doesn't take away from them putting their arms around his neck, choking him to death. On top of that, their medical examiner said there was no trauma in his death, as if this 19-year-old kid just died of natural causes while he was being choked. And the mayor, Joseph Moon, who has been caping for the cop Tom Webster from day one and is still caping. And months later, they're still waiting for a toxicology report before they can move forward with the case, looking for the best way to justify this death, which they eventually will most likely do. But this is why it's important for us to protect ourselves. If harming us came with consequences, people will start to think twice. And if we don't protect our children and protect our elderly and protect everybody, then we find ourselves being easy targets way too often. At the end of the day, we all we got. If we don't get ourselves out of this situation, nobody else will.
More than half a dozen black employees at a GM plant say they are facing racist threats and intimidation at work. Their evidence is laid out in a lawsuit with pictures of nooses, whites-only signs, and the N-word they say showed up inside the plant. While GM says it takes discrimination and intimidation seriously and is doing all it can to get rid of the problem, a state law enforcement agency ruled it isn't doing enough. CNN's Sarah Seidner has a story, and I have to warn you, okay? You will hear racial epithets and disturbing language in this story.
Every day he walked into work, Marcus Boyd prayed he'd survive his shift unscathed.
I felt like I was at war, risking my life every day.
Derek Brooks, a former Marine, worked in the same place. Both were supervisors on different shifts at the General Motors transmission plant in Toledo, Ohio. Brooks considers himself tough from his military training, but he struggled to handle what was happening at work.
How rough and tough can you be when you got 11 or 12 people who want to put a noose around your neck and hang you till you're dead?
There's a reason he brings up nooses. It's not just a figure of speech.
This is the picture of the noose that I found the night that I was at work on my shift.
According to a lawsuit now pending against GM, this is one of at least 5 nooses discovered at their workplace in separate incidents. The suit also claims there were signs that blacks were not welcome there. Whites only scrawled on a bathroom wall, along with swastikas on bathroom stalls and niggers not allowed scratched or written on bathroom walls.
This was saying, you don't belong here. This was saying, if you stay here, this is what could possibly happen to you.
In this struggling town, Brooks and Boyd didn't want to leave their 6-figure jobs. Brooks has 8 children. Boyd takes care of his mother, who is an amputee. Now, they and 7 others have sued GM for allowing an underlying atmosphere of violent racial hate and bullying. When did you notice overt racism?
Well, when an employee that was under me, he told me that back in the day, a person like me would have been buried with a shovel.
He said what to you?
That was a death threat, and I was told to push that to the side.
Boyd says he reported the incident.
He admitted to it, and I was pulled to the side and said, you know, if you want to build relationships here, you know, you just let things go, he'll be all right.
But he says the threats got worse. Were you afraid for your life?
Definitely. That's why I left.
When the noose appeared in March of 2017, Derek Brooks says he reported it to upper management. He was sure he was the intended target, but says he was told to investigate by questioning his employees.
It felt like a slap in the face. It did, but I had to be professional.
Brooks and other black employees also noticed being called Dan.
I thought they just mispronounced my name for Derek. Then later I find out that Dan was an acronym for dumbass nigga.
General Motors sent us a statement insisting discrimination and harassment are not acceptable and in stark contrast to how they expect people to show up at work. We treat any reported incident with sensitivity and urgency and are committed to providing an environment that is safe, open, and inclusive. And that every day, everyone at General Motors is expected to uphold the values that are an integral part of its culture. But according to more than half dozen current and former black employees, the problem is the culture. They say inside this plant, racism and harassment are the norm, not the exception.
It is a culture.
It's a culture. Yeah. You have to, it's from the top down and the bottom up.
One employee filed a police report. Others filed complaints with the Ohio Civil Rights Commission prior to filing suit.
The ultimate decision that was made is that GM did allow a racially hostile environment.
They allege they investigated quickly and have done remedial things to take care of the problem.
The commission disagrees with that position. GM did not do very much at all, or what they did do was not effective.
GM says that they held mandatory meetings and even closed the plant for a day for training and to address the issue with every shift. The Civil Rights Commission report noted a former union president's testimony that during one of those meetings, a white supervisor said too big of a deal was being made of the nooses. After all, there was never a black person who was lynched that didn't deserve it. The lawsuit alleges that supervisor was never disciplined.
General Motors is supposed to stand for something, right? That's the great American company. Well, what are you doing about this?
A GM representative that we spoke to says that they have not identified those who put up the nooses, and therefore no one has been fired for those incidents. They said, however, that some people have been dismissed in that Toledo plant during what it's calling its extensive anti-discrimination and anti-harassment work, and that work continues today. But Don, guess what else continues? Yeah. The racist threats. Just today, We received a picture from inside of the plant sent to an attorney that mentions hanging people. There have been other threats against those who have spoken out, black workers there, threats directed directly at them, and they are now in fear and would not go on camera because they were in fear for speaking out again in case more threats came their way as they're going through this process, Dawn.
For the 3 officers, a sweeping victory.
There is a finding of not guilty as to every count.
For the critics of the Chicago Police Department, a stunning defeat.
This verdict lets us know that the blue code of silence is alive and well in Chicago.
Officer Thomas Gaffney, former Officer Joseph Walsh, and former Detective David March, now cleared of charges they tried to cover up evidence to protect a fellow officer, Jason Van Dyke, later convicted of murder. He's seen on this chilling dashcam video shooting 17-year-old Laquan McDonald 16 times as he walked away.
16 shots! 16 shots!
Protesters were outraged because the video was released 1 year after the fatal shooting and only after a lawsuit. Prosecutors in today's case allege the police reports were written to suggest McDonald was the aggressor, an argument the judge rejected.
These 3 men were innocent from day one.
Tomorrow, former Officer Van Dyke is scheduled to be sentenced and faces up to 96 years in prison.
I want to take a moment to apologize. We have heard from a viewer about a mistake I made in our 5 a.m. newscast this morning. In our story about the tribute to Dr. King, I unfortunately mispronounced his name. Please know I have total respect for Dr. King, what he meant and continues to mean to our country. This was not intentional in any way, and I sincerely apologize.
Brittany Noble, a black news anchor from Jackson, Mississippi, has detailed in a lengthy post the workplace discrimination she endured, which eventually led to her termination. In a Medium post, which has gone viral, Noble reveals specific incidents where she had to navigate through a toxic environment at CBS affiliate WJTV, and it prompted her to file several HR complaints. One such complaint was lodged after a supervisor commented on her natural curly hair, saying it looked quote-unquote unprofessional. She wrote, "Let's be clear, my look has never been unprofessional on TV, but my boss would invite me into his office for closed-door meetings where he got away with saying extremely unprofessional comments." She continues, "After having my son, I asked my news director if I could stop straightening my hair. A month after giving me the green light, I was pulled back into his office. I was told my natural hair is unprofessional and the equivalent to him throwing on a baseball cap to go to the grocery store. He even asked why my hair doesn't lay flat." The same boss allegedly said that Mississippi viewers needed to see a beauty queen. After a 2-month investigation that included a review of the recordings Noble shared of their conversation, her boss was fired, but the racist culture still thrived within the company. Noble told the Daily Dot, quote, "They replaced the boss and the behavior continued," end quote. She added that the news station terminated her 3-year contract last May after she used her own sick time to take care for her dying grandfather. She intends to spill the tea on all the investigations that were allegedly dismissed when she worked at WJTV.
A racially charged Snapchat post has landed one student in big legal trouble, and the victim's family is taking matters into their own hands, claiming the school has not done enough about it. It happened at the Menacing Valley High School in Orange County. News 4's Pat Battles spoke with the victim's family.
And I want me to be the last person in Menacing, in Orange County, in New York to ever have to go through this.
And what happened to Nsenga Kinzanzi, a sophomore here at Menacing Valley High School in Middletown, is absolutely vile. Another student posting this photo of her on social media, the caption calling her the N-word and reading, "We must lynch her."
I thought maybe he doesn't know the history. So I decided to take an educational approach and inform the student about the history behind his hurtful caption.
So this honor student explained that history and says while her classmate apologized, the school district response has been lacking at best.
There's a threat made on her life and there was a call for others to participate in it. The caption said, "We must lynch her."
Nsenga says she's gotten a lot of support from fellow students, but there's a lot of harassment as well. The family's gone to civil rights attorney Michael Sussman.
We have to address these issues, as painful as it is, difficult as it is. We have to demand other resolutions and solutions, because we keep coming back to the same place around here. That's the problem.
I would like there to be some kind of sensitivity training for staff and students. If we're not teaching all of American history, we're not teaching.
The family has a meeting scheduled with the school superintendent for Monday. Brian Monahan said in a statement last month that the district has no tolerance for hateful language or conduct that endangers the physical or emotional sense of security for its staff or students, and that there should be consequences. This family says this isn't just about consequence, it's about change.
An Orlando police officer was suspended for calling black people savages on Facebook.
Tonight we've learned that he called a crowd of people savages to their faces outside of a nightclub a year before that Facebook post was even made. Channel 9's Samantha Manning joins us live from OPD headquarters tonight. Sam, the Police Citizens Review Board says this body camera investigation has never been brought to them.
Greg, the review board never knew about the body camera incident when they reviewed the complaint about the Facebook post, which happened about a year later. In both cases, the officer was found to have violated the department's policy.
Get out of here.
This body camera footage from May of 2017 shows things got heated between Orlando police officer Robert Shellhorn and people outside of the Parliament House nightclub on Orange Blossom Trail. Officer Shellhorn sprayed one of the women with a chemical agent at one point. Records show it was to gain control and disperse the crowd.
I know. I need your ID to document that I sprayed you.
It was this comment that got Shellhorn in trouble.
Time to go, savages, go!
An internal investigation found Shellhorn violated the conduct toward the public policy. He was suspended for 80 hours and was ordered to take sensitivity training following this incident.
You guys are acting out of control.
This all happened almost a year before Shellhorn was investigated for a post on Facebook calling black people savages, athletes, and thugs. But the Orlando Police Citizens Review Board says it wasn't made aware of the incident outside of the Parliament House because the complaint was not made by a citizen. In April, Shellhorn was suspended for 80 hours for the Facebook post. At that time, the review board asked OPD to let Shellhorn go from the department. Chief John Mina said while he was embarrassed and ashamed by the statements, he stood by the disciplinary action. Officer Shellhorn walked out of this conference room, and today we heard from him, but we also heard from one of his former supervisors. Both think his suspension is excessive and want it reduced.
In the moment, you believe that you were having a private conversation with Mr. Rivera and Sean Dunlop? Yes.
But that conversation happened online, and now we all can see the post officer Robert Shellhorn made on Facebook. He was suspended for 80 hours after Orlando police determined he violated the social media policy by calling black NFL players savages and using other inappropriate language in posts made over 2 days in August 2017.
Regrettably, I used unbelievably hateful language towards him and hurtful. I was completely disrespectful to him.
Shellhorn says he reacted badly because he was sensitive to criticism against police, especially in light of the recent shooting deaths of 2 Kissimmee police officers and Orlando Lieutenant Deborah Clayton. Shellhorn then became emotional as he remembered responding to help her.
I ripped her shirt open. I took her vest off. I was trying to find a wound or something. So then I pulled her towards me.
That emotion plus Shellhorn's past work as a good police officer were enough to bring retired Lieutenant Richard Ruth to Shellhorn's defense. After the Facebook post, Ruth recommended a 16-hour suspension for Shellhorn. Ruth also wrote Shellhorn never brought up race, which was disputed in arbitration.
In your memorandum, when you said, in recommending a 16-hour suspension with mitigating factors, that one of them was race was not mentioned by Shellhorn.
Yes, sir.
And in fact, race was mentioned by Shellhorn, was it not?
It was mentioned, sir.
Okay, thank you.
That needs to be addressed today. When in 1946, when the NFL was forced to reintegrate, because from 1933 to 1945, the all-white NFL didn't want any blacks in the industry. They said the black players were slowing down its growth. And then Fritz Pollard developed the Negro Football League. And after World War II, there was a big push for the Negro League to compete with the all-white NFL. So what they did was they took the good players from the Negro League and integrated them into the all-white NFL. And now, since 1946, the black players have taken it to $1 billion plus market, yet we have no owner within the industry. We are the record breakers and the trendsetters, yet we have no voice within the industry. NFL owners are guaranteed profits annually without even a fan going into the stadium, yet players have no guaranteed contracts. This is plantation capitalism going on right now.
He'll be arrested.
What? Don't cry. It's okay. Just step away. Listen to Wanda Sykes. She said step away. Alright. I thought this was my hood.
What hood? Like you own Baltimore City?
Darkness.
Wait, now you're gonna play the race card?
Darkness. Let's go, guys. Let's go. Honey Boo Boo, stop following me, please.
Ugly nigga, go away.
Ugly what?
Ugly black guy, go away. Oh, dick.
I promise you it's like 8.5 inches.
Oh, that, you know what men say that? When they have tiny dicks.
No, I promise I don't have a small penis.
You do.
I can show you. You want to see?
Sure, go right ahead. Pull it out.
You're weird. You're so weird.
You do. They have a small penis because they can't get laid properly, so they go do stupid shit like this.
I can't get laid properly? What, do they lay me sideways? What are you saying right now?
You have a small dick, so you can't fuck real well. You don't satisfy people.
You salivate a lot. That's why you spit on me 4 times. Tastes like a lot of dick. Have you been sucking dick lately? Put the knife away. You just spit on me, now you're gonna stab me?
Yeah, because you just threatened my life.
Excuse me? You could just walk away. You're following me. How am I threatening your life?
Don't spit on me. You literally just tried to spit on me now.
You're crazy.
I'm not.
I knew you were crazy by the way you put your lipstick on, but now this just proves it. Put the knife away. What are you, Batman? What the fuck are you doing?
You just threatened my life. You have to get off this whole entire this whole property.
Miss, you are an assistant manager at Sprint. You do not own this shopping center.
But I have the right to kick you off the premises.
I have the right to call a doctor. You just spit on me and you have herpes.
You just spit on me and you were ugly.
That doesn't make any sense.
What the fuck is your problem?
Why didn't you just give me herpes?
I didn't give you herpes. I didn't touch
What is that on your lip? Herp. The herp.